For all things Charlotte Readers Podcast, check out charlottereaderspodcast.com. You can find a list of all episodes, an alphabetical guest list with links, detailed show notes for each episode, a community blog, and more. We'd love to have you visit.
All right, we're in Act 3, Scene 1. This is our marketing talk time. So we're gonna talk marketing, book marketing, and Hannah being the book whisperer here, she can certainly weigh in and help us out.
Ask some good questions.
Good questions. I know Sarah does too, having been a published novelist. This topic is what's a Bookstagram tour and why should authors consider doing it? And I've written a blog post on this. You can find that at Wade Scripts at my website, landiswade.com. Very original name for a website, but and congrats to Sarah first on you got your website updated there too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It looks great.
It pays to have a dad who does web design. So
yeah, exactly.
it helped me overhaul my author website, which was awesome.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, we'll be putting this in show notes and our newsletters and everything, but we're going to be, each of us committed to writing one blog post a month, putting it to our individual websites. We'll link to it also in our show notes and our and in the newsletter. So there'll be that. And we'll be talking about those from time to time here on the podcast. And each month on Patreon, we're also going to individually do some Patreon episodes for our patron supporters where we talk about some of these topics. But we'll bring them to the free podcast every now and then too. And this is one of those. It's what's a Bookstagram tour and why should authors consider doing it? So I guess I'll turn it over to y'all to grill me on this topic.
Well, you kind of worked with an outside party to help coordinate a Bookstagram tour, right? What was that like for you?
Yeah, and so maybe, and I'll answer that question, but maybe I should tell readers, what is Bookstagram? Because people, may go, well, I'm not really sure. Is that like TikTok or, what exactly are we talking about here? And Bookstagram is a way that creatives who are on Instagram, let's see, Google defines it as people known as Bookstagrammers are Instagram users who focus on artfully staged book photos and or reviews. And they go on to say it's an integral part of the bookish community. So that's sort of a foundational definition of, what Bookstagram is. And now I've lost the question. Yeah.
I feel like also to add to that, Bookstagram is kind of like, I would say it's like the social media fan club of reading. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like I look at it as kind of a hashtag too, where people who use, or it's like the hashtag Bookstagram or Bookstagrammers, stuff like that, or people who have built these relationships with either publishing houses or publicists or people like companies that coordinate Bookstagram tours to get reviews out there for books. So it's kind of a very I don't know. It's becoming a huge thing right now, just because Instagram is a huge thing, and like you mentioned, TikTok, Book Talk. I've read so many different articles lately that it's like a booming thing for books too. So it's kind of like the internet book fan club, book and author fan club.
And we are actually going to be in our episode 33 talking about Book Talk. We've got an author who's going to come on and tell us a little bit more about that. It was something I haven't dipped my toe into yet, but I have dipped it into Bookstagram. And back to your question as to why I decided to do that with the launch of my recent novel, I was looking for creative ways to kind of get the word out there. I mean, look, all authors struggle with, how do you market and sell your book? I mean, and it's this is one way that you can do it and have fun, because I actually had fun engaging with the Bookstagrammers who ended up pitching my book and putting it out there, and they took different pictures of it. And I'll talk a little bit about that process, but I mean, just to start with, I would say, if you're thinking about another way to get some publicity for your book that also can result in reviews on the online providers like Amazon's and Goodreads, then connecting with the Bookstagram tour that is reputable and can do a good job will get some early publicity for your book. Because what they do is they pitch your book to to the people who in the past have been on, part of their stable of people that do these tours, and they'll come in and they'll say, yeah, I'd like to do that book. And then, so what the author does, once you connect with someone who's doing the tour, is you then send them, a paperback copy of the book and send them some information, and they get the book and they can take pictures of it. And it was really fun because I think I had about 25 bookstagrammers on my tour, and they all took pictures of the book in different ways. Some of them, because my theme has sort of a historical colonial period, some of them took it, next to the Declaration of Independence or next to the Constitution or with an American flag, and some took it outside, and some took it with the colors or on a bookshelf. So you have all these different nice looking photographs of your book too that you can use for promotion later. And then they each put a review up on their page, and then they'll go put it on, as I said, those online providers. So you get some early reviews. And by early, let me just say this. I made this mistake early on. My first book, I thought, you write it, they will come, Field of Dreams. No, it doesn't work that way. You got to plan ahead. You really have to plan ahead. And Hannah, you know this because you've helped me as a publicist for this latest book. But we were planning the release of that book, 6 months in advance, right? I mean, at least 7
Probably a
months.
little bit longer than that. Yeah.
Yeah. And tell our listeners why we do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to. I mean, to put it simply, but no, I mean, honestly, I think the big thing is just like having a strategy, and that doesn't just happen overnight. So it's kind of just like what you're trying to do is get ahead of the curve, I guess is a good way to put it. But like, so if your publication date, like for you, it was earlier this spring, it was something that we needed to start thinking about last summer, which we did that. So it's, and like for, let's just say, because for you, I know you started doing your Bookstagram, you reached out to start doing that last November for an April launch point, which is good because you're working with a lot of different folks' schedules. So that's the big thing too when you're looking at media coverage, is you're not just kind of looking at your own needs where you're like, well, yeah, can you do this tomorrow? Like, no. And I think like you have to work around the schedule, like editorial calendars, and for Bookstagrammers, like what books, they probably have a huge stack of books they have to read. So, and it doesn't take, as Landis, it doesn't take no time to read like 10 books. So it's kind of important to just make sure you start doing this early so you can work on that schedule. So it's kind of timed out perfectly.
Yeah, and that gets kind of into the nuts and bolts of it. I worked, shout out here to Susie Approved Book Tours. I was recommended to her by Cindy Burnett with Thoughts from a Page podcast in Houston. And, I connected with her, and what I did was early on, I sent her a media sheet, sent her access to a Google Drive that had photos, the book covers and reviews and that kind of thing. And, that's just sort of a starting point to think about. That's another thing if you're talking about advanced, because when I'm sending that out in November or December to the tour guide, I've got to already have that novel sheet put together. I've already got to have the Google Drive with some, the book cover and everything in it. And that's all very helpful to the tour guide, because then they take that and they bundle it together. They send it out for people to sort. It's not really a bid, but they're kind of, I want to do this tour. And then when they hear back from you, I was then mailing out books to 25 Bookstagrammers in December. So they had time to read it. And we planned a tour that ran from February 15th to April 15th, because the book released on ebook on March 1st and released in print on April 1st. And I know the dogs are happy about that, the way we, saved that.
Yeah.
They're back. So we spread it out over, like 2 months with 25 reviewers, and it just kind of released over time. But the point being, I had to plan in advance, and people might be asking, well, what does it cost to do something like that? And what I would say is that it's not a return on investment. You can get some that are much more inexpensive in the $250 to $300 range. I went more in the $550 range because I wanted the full tour, and I wanted someone that was professional and had done this many times and had a good rapport with the people. And it showed in what came through, because they read the books, they provided their own unique perspectives. I know for a fact that people who saw those reviews bought books. I know that they left reviews. I know they referred them to people. You could see comments in their stream. Oh, I got to put this on my list to read. But can I do an actual ROI, return on investment? No, you can't. You can't figure that out. It's not, and it's like a lot of things you do in book marketing. I know both of y'all know this from your experience. There are just a lot of things you can't quantify when you're talking about, book marketing, right? And y'all may both have perspectives on that. Sarah, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I mean, for me, since I was traditionally published, I didn't I wasn't as hands-on with setting up a lot of that stuff for my book. Like with the UK release of my book from HarperCollins UK, they did do a Bookstagram tour, but I really wasn't involved in it. The publisher set all of that up. So I don't know what they put into it, and I don't know exactly, like you're saying, you can't quantify exactly what comes out of it because a lot of the value is just getting your book out there, and you don't know exactly who is seeing those posts and seeing the cover, but the more the name and the cover image are out there and your name as a writer are out there, that's all contributing to, a potential audience for the book and for your other books in the future. So it might be a little bit frustrating from a business perspective that you can't know for sure if you're getting, a real return on those dollars. But I think generally speaking, it's proven to be worth it.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference. We talked about this before between book marketing and book selling. Book marketing is more about establishing a little bit of your platform, your website, maybe positioning your book so that people are starting to see it and talk about it. Book selling might be more in the terms of advertising, getting it into bookstores and those kind of things. But for me, I found that this particular part of the book marketing process, other than just throwing dollars, at some advertising algorithm, was fun. It was engaging. I mean, they would tag, I didn't have my cool little Landis Writes Instagram page set up with, so they would tag Charlotte Reader's podcast when they posted about it, and then people would engage about it. And they would also do these stories on Instagram, which I'm not any good at, but they would do that, and I would, reshare those, and then their communities would get engaged about it. And then Susie Approved Bookstores book tour would actually put it up on her site, and so it got a lot of traction early on. And when you're looking to try to get reviews early on, when you're getting 15, 20, 25 reviews early in the process from people that aren't your mother, your brother, your sister, that kind of thing, it helps kind of start to get, the excitement, going about the book. So I found it to be a valuable process. And if anybody's listening who's curious about what it looked like, in this particular blog post on my website at landiswade.com, I almost said Landis Writes because that's my little Instagram page. But at landiswade.com, you can go there, and I've got at the end of the blog post, I've got all of the images of those from the Bookstagram tour. What I did was every time they posted one, I would go in and I would copy the image they created and drop it in a folder because I knew I might be able to use it later for some kind of promotion. So it was, I think it's really one of the things that's, if you're talking about, you can spend a lot of money in a lot of different ways on marketing, but I do think it's one thing that does have some value for pretty good, decent price when you're talking about getting early reviews and getting some traction out there with people that have got, big followings.
Now I have a question too. Obviously, you went through this woman, Susie, to do your Bookstagram tour. Is this something that writers can coordinate on their own? Like, is it kind of kosher to reach out directly to Bookstagrammers and ask them to read your book?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no real difference than that than actually reaching out to people and asking them to be advanced readers. I do think though that it's harder for an author who's publishing a book if they're not a Bookstagrammer themselves and they're not already in that community following other Bookstagrammers to actually get on their radar and get into, their queue in terms of being. But if you're friends with Bookstagrammers and they are willing to read your book, sure, you can reach out to them and try to be a part of it. But I do think that if you go through a tour guide, not only are you going to get the promotion from a wider variety of people that you might be able to touch base with yourself, but you're going to be on their Instagram site, you're going to be on your tour guide site, you're going to be on the tour guide's website, and you just might have a chance to touch more people. That being said, there's no reason not to do a Bookstagram tour and also reach out to those people that who are really active influencers on Instagram and say, hey, if I send you a copy of my book, will you do an honest review, for your followers?
I would say also that it's important to build the relationship before asking them to do that. Like, because that's something that I've heard just from folks that I know who do it. And it's kind of just like, I think if you're an author that wants to do it yourself, that's great. But you just would want to make sure you're already like following the person, liking their posts, like doing things like that to make it like very obvious that you value the work that they're doing. And you kind of see, you just sort of feed their brand too. And I would say too, just it's probably like going through someone who already has those connections. I mean, especially with the rise of Bookstagram, since there's so many different levels of influencers too. There's like the micro influencers who have less followers, and then there's the big ones that have like 50,000, whatever it might be. It's if you work with someone who's been doing it for a long time, you're more likely, I would say, to kind of be seen by some of these folks. And a good way to tell, just if you are a writer who's looking to do something like that on your own, is just to go to their bios. And some people will have emails on there. And those are probably the people who are going to be more receptive to what you're going to say, because you don't have to go through a million hoops, or you don't like have to kind of go through the DM, or just like it's going to be a lot more direct. So that might be an indication that those are people who are more open to receiving pitches from authors and stuff like that. Just because I think over the last several years, it's gotten to a point where it's very similar to like a big media outlet. I mean, while there's different levels and different accounts and stuff like that, the ones who are really going to make an impact, it might be better to go through someone who already has that in. Or like I said, if it has, if you go to their bios and you're kind of looking into their brand and stuff like that, if they have direct contact information, because those are the people that are going to want to talk to you versus like having the contact for stuff like that. So
and just to add to that, I would say that they will know too whether these Instagrammers, Bookstagrammers, are that they like to read the genre that you're actually writing. So, for example, if they're with your rom-com, you probably want Instagrammers who've got big followings in the rom-com arena who are gonna, want to read your book and get excited about it. Same thing with me. I was looking for the mystery thrillers, and she reached out to some cozy mystery Bookstagrammers. So if don't just go to any Instagrammer listener, and they may be doing historical fiction, and your book is a fantasy set in outer space. Well, it's probably not going to be a good fit. And if they did decide to do it, they might not give you a very good review. But so try to look for those people that do it, which kind of brings to heart the point that not every book is for everybody. I mean, there are readers love to read different kinds of work. Some are literary fiction, some are, like I said, mystery, some are humor, some narrative nonfiction. So it's all about kind of finding. And I agree with Hannah that while you can reach out, actually, if you can, as an author, build your own influencer following, I mean, that's almost better than anything, right? If you've got 10,000 or 20,000 or 30,000 followers on Instagram, you might not even need a Bookstagram tour, or maybe you've made connections with other people who are your followers and you follow them, and that's a good way to connect. So it's really it gets back to, it's all kind of about community, and if you've got the community, use it. At the same time, give back when you do. Be careful about cold call, and if you do cold call a Bookstagram tour and pitch them with what you have, and maybe they'll put you in the right space.
I like how just one quick thing is I like how they call themselves tour guides. I think that's cute. You know what I mean?
Charlotte Readers Podcast is on social media, and we'd love to have you follow and engage with us. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Charlotte Readers Podcast. Check us out.